Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, the White House issues new travel restrictions to 5 new countries. Jack Bradley brings us the details on that, plus more on Trump's $10 billion lawsuit against the BBC. Authorities released new information about Sunday's Hanukkah shooters. Records show the men recently visited an ISIS-linked area in the Philippines. Jason Perry with the details. Law enforcement in Rhode Island intensify their search for the Brown University shooter. It's day 4, and investigators are continuing to push for new evidence, with additional information released today. Arlene Richards has the latest. Nick Reiner, son of filmmaker Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner, was due to appear in court in Los Angeles today. The district attorney's office announced charges for the murder of his parents. Christina Corona reports.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. Officials in Australia are still investigating Sunday's Hanukkah shooting. Records show that the 2 suspects recently visited an area in the Philippines with known connections to ISIS. NTD's Jason Perry has the details.
Australian authorities spoke to reporters on Tuesday after a father and son allegedly shot and killed 15 people and injured more than 40 at a Hanukkah celebration. The New South Wales police commissioner said the father and son had both traveled to the Philippines last month.
The reasons why they went to the Philippines and the purpose of that and where they went when they were there is under investigation at the moment.
Records indicate that the father and son flew to the southern Philippines, an area that's been described as ideal for foreign fighters seeking training with terrorist groups such as Abu Sayyaf and Islamic State-linked factions. In 2023, the U.S. State Department said the Philippines remained a destination for foreign terrorists. The police commissioner also said they found improvised explosive devices, or IEDs, in the son's vehicle, as well as homemade ISIS flags. Dashcam video from Sunday's shooting shows an ISIS flag prominently displayed in the vehicle's front windshield. This video caught the moment a bystander took the gun away from one of the alleged shooters. Both men were seen falling to the ground as the bystander's wife watched nearby. According to the Times of Israel, the terrorists then shot and killed both of them before going on to kill more people at Bondi Beach. Another man, Ahmed Al-Ahmed, was seen in this footage taking the rifle away from the same gunman. On Tuesday, Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese visited Al-Ahmed in the hospital.
Thank you very much. Heart is strong. Thank you. Your courage is inspiring. Thank you very much.
Albanese says he wants stricter gun laws in the country. Meanwhile, Israel's ambassador to Australia visited the site of the shootings during Hanukkah.
This is insane. And it's also very important to remember that when we're talking about the Jewish community, we're talking first and foremost about Australians, Australian citizens.
And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this.
I demand that Western governments do what is necessary to combat anti-Semitism and provide the necessary security and safety for Jewish communities around the world.
2 Australian police officers are in critical condition after confronting the alleged gunman. Jason Perry, NTD News.
2 Trump administration cabinet members briefed lawmakers on the ongoing strikes against foreign terrorist organizations in the Caribbean, and House Republican leadership prepares to tackle health care with a vote this week. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Martinez, has the details on these stories.
It is the 22nd bipartisan briefing we've had on a highly successful mission to counter designated terrorist organizations, cartels.
Provide updates on this counter-drug mission, which is focused on dismantling the infrastructure of these terrorist organizations that are operating in our hemisphere, undermining the security of Americans.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth briefed all 100 senators and then all congressmen on the ongoing strikes against foreign terrorist organizations in the region. House and Senate Armed Services Committee members will receive an additional briefing on Wednesday conducted by Admiral Bradley of U.S. Special Operations Command. Despite numerous briefings on the subject, Senate Democrats insist on more transparency from the White House.
This seems to me clearly about regime change, but so what's their plan for dealing with the chaos that inevitably ensues when a dictator is overthrown?
Republican Senator Tim Sheehy, a former Navy SEAL, has backed the Trump administration's efforts and decisions.
When we task our commandos to go out and attack a vessel underway, that's an incredibly high-risk mission. So when folks say, well, we should be interdicting, that's easy for you to say here in this building between 2 cups of cappuccinos. Venezuela is not just a drug cartel government. It's a transnational sponsor of crime. It's a transnational cooperator with Iran, with Russia, with China.
And on the House side, House Republican leadership has rejected proposals to vote to extend the Obamacare COVID-era healthcare subsidies that are set to expire by the end of the year.
In 2023, 29,000 Social Security numbers were used by multiple persons. In 2024, 68,000 Social Security numbers used by multiple people to bilk the system, to defraud the system, and to take dollars to themselves. The GAO also found that more than 94 million last year alone was sent to insurers on behalf of people who were already deceased.
Instead, House Republican leadership plans to put to a vote a proposal that seeks to decrease drug prices, lower healthcare premiums, and provide subsidies for low-income families for out-of-pocket expenses. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Nick Reiner, the son of Rob and Michelle Reiner, failed to appear in court today. Officials have announced murder charges against him in connection with the death of his parents at their Los Angeles home over the weekend. NTD's Christina Corona has the latest.
We're here outside the Los Angeles Superior Courthouse, where we learned that Nick Reiner did not make a court appearance today. His attorney, Alan Jackson, told several reporters waiting outside the courthouse that his client has not yet been medically cleared to be transported to court. Nick Reiner is currently being held without a bail at the Twin Towers jail facility in downtown LA. Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan Hochman, alongside LAPD Chief Jim McDonnell, announced formal charges have been filed against Nick Reiner in the murders of his parents.
These charges will be 2 counts of first-degree murder with the special circumstance of multiple murders. He also faces a special allegation that he personally used a dangerous and deadly weapon, that being a knife. These charges carry a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty.
Authorities said he was arrested Sunday night on suspicion of stabbing both parents to death inside their Brentwood home.
Once the charges get filed this afternoon, Nick Reiner will be then brought to court. He is going through medical clearance.
He said it's a standard process for anyone held in a Los Angeles County jail.
Once he is medically cleared, he will be brought to court to be arraigned on these charges. At that point, he will enter a plea of guilty or not guilty.
Police said Nick was not at home when officers arrived, and detectives believe he left sometime after the attacks.
Upon entering the residence, they discovered the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Reiner. The evidence gathered led to the arrest of their son, Nick Reiner, who was taken into custody later that night without incident in the Exposition Park section of our city.
Daily Mail reports the couple's daughter, Romy, discovered her parents after a scheduled masseuse was unable to enter the home. TMZ also reports the family attended a holiday party at Conan O'Brien's house the night before, where Nick Reiner and his father were involved in a heated argument. Nick Reiner has previously spoken about struggling with addiction since his teens and later worked with his father on the 2015 film Being Charlie, inspired by those experiences. Nick's lawyer told reporters that Nick's first court appearance could be as early as Wednesday. Reporting from downtown Los Angeles, Christina Corona, NTD News.
The manhunt intensifies for the Brown University shooter. Rhode Island officials held a press conference this afternoon after releasing a new enhanced image and video footage. Meanwhile, the university's president announced a prayer service to mourn the loss of 2 students. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
A manhunt intensified, a new image released, and 2 slain students mourned. These are the latest updates on day 4 of the search for a deadly mass shooter who killed 2 Brown University students and injured 9 others last Saturday. The university's president sent out a heartfelt message mourning the loss of those students. On Tuesday afternoon, Providence officials held a press conference to provide updates on the search. Police Chief Oscar Perez showed the latest video released just before the conference and asked the public for help.
And so we're asking the public to ensure that they can see here that you want to focus on the body movements, the way the person moved their arms, the body posture, the way they carry their weight. I think those are important movement patterns that may help you identify this individual, which is extremely important.
Rhode Island Attorney General Peter Nerona asked the public to be patient.
I think the investigation in a case like this, which is a challenging one, is going really well. On the third floor of this building, there are dozens of agents, detectives, led by Providence Police, prosecutors from my office, working to put together, and what you're seeing is just a portion of what they're working on right now.
The FBI released an updated video timeline showing the movements of a person of interest. Earlier on Tuesday afternoon, officials released an enhanced photo of the suspect. The suspect is estimated to be 5'8" with a stocky build and wearing a dark two-tone jacket. This latest image shows him wearing a crossbody bag. On Monday, Providence police released 3 videos of the suspect wandering around a local neighborhood about 2 hours before the shooting. The footage provided the clearest images yet of the suspect. About 5 videos have been released so far, with none of them capturing a clear image of the man's face. The FBI released 2 additional still photographs on Tuesday and said they're working closely with local law enforcement to find the gunman. As the shooter remains on the loose Tuesday, police visited Providence schools to reassure parents, kids, and teachers. Meanwhile, investigators scoured the neighborhood looking for new evidence that might help them identify the suspect. They're focusing on what may have motivated the attack. Potential questions to answer include: was there a target? Why Brown University? And why those 2 students? Brown University President Christina Paxson issued a campus-wide message Tuesday mourning the loss of Ella Cook and Mohammad Aziz Umerzakov, the 2 students killed in the mass shooting. 3 days ago, we lost 2 members of our Brown community to an act of unimaginable and senseless violence, she said in the statement. These were 2 young people whose amazing promise was extinguished too soon. Cook was a sophomore and Umerzakov was in his first semester at Brown. On behalf of our entire community at Brown, I extend the university's deepest, most profound condolences, she continued. Paxson announced a virtual interfaith prayer service to be held on Wednesday, December 17th at 3 p.m. Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee also issued a statement of condolences. A memorial continues to grow outside the building where the shooting took place. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The White House banning travel from 5 more countries on top of those considered high risk, like Iran, Somalia, and Yemen, among others. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more from the White House.
The White House on Tuesday moving to ban travel from nationals from 5 new countries while imposing limits on others. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, South Sudan, and Syria all face full restrictions and entry limitations. And there are similar restrictions targeting those holding travel documents issued by the Palestinian Authority, which is the political entity that controls parts of the Israeli West Bank and used to control Gaza. Meanwhile, the press secretary today defending the White House chief of staff amid a profile done on her in Vanity Fair, calling it a hit piece.
This is, unfortunately, another example of disingenuous reporting.
Also, President Trump's legal team on Monday night filing a $10 billion lawsuit against the BBC, alleging defamation in a news special that aired last year. The BBC edited Trump's January 6th speech, taking 2 parts nearly an hour apart and splicing them together, suggesting that he incited violence. The piece aired just prior to the 2024 election. Here's the original version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
And here's the BBC's edit.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
The BBC's CEO and director resigned after President Trump vowed to sue in November, and the chair apologized for the edit, calling it misleading and a mistake, but rejected claims of bias in the reporting. Trump settled cases with ABC, which paid his presidential library $15 million to settle a defamation case, and CBS paid Trump $16 million to settle a case over election interference with its editing of an interview with former Vice President Kamala Harris. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance rallied in Pennsylvania on Tuesday, speaking on the state of the economy and the administration's aim to lower prices.
If you look at every single affordability crisis that we talk about in the United States of America today, it's because we inherited a nightmare of an economy from Joe Biden. The highest peacetime debt and deficits in the history of the United States of America. That blows the door off inflation.
This comes just 1 week after President Trump made a visit to Pennsylvania to speak to supporters in the Poconos about affordability. And Trump's heading to North Carolina on Friday, holding a similar rally with more scheduled ahead of next year's midterm elections. President Trump is also scheduled to give a national address on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
He's going to talk a lot about the accomplishments over the past 11 months, all that he's done to bring our country back to greatness, and all he continues to plan to do to continue delivering for the American people over the next 3 years.
And the president will travel to Dover Air Force Base to welcome back the 2 fallen soldiers from Syria on Wednesday. Reporting from the White House, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
The November jobs report is in. The U.S. job market delivered a modest surprise, with employers adding 64,000 jobs that topped expectations of about 50,000. The unemployment rate edged up to 4.6%, slightly higher than the 4.5% forecast and up from September's 4.4%. The report was delayed due to data collection challenges following the government shutdown, which also prevented an October unemployment reading. Federal Reserve officials made their latest rate decision without this report. Markets now largely expect rates to remain unchanged at the Fed's next meeting in January. When asked about rising unemployment, National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett said that labor participation also rose.
How concerned are you the unemployment rate keeps rising?
Well, the other thing that rose was labor force participation. And I think that right now, for those two things to happen, probably what's going on is the 250,000 federal government workers who took the buyout are staying in the labor force and looking for work. And so we saw a big reduction, about 250,000 in federal employment. We saw an uptick in the unemployment rate, but we also saw an uptick a few months in a row of labor force participation. So I think those government workers are out there looking for jobs. And there's an academic literature that suggests that they'll be very successful at it because government workers tend to be very well qualified when they hit the private sector.
Coming up, House lawmakers say that European regulation aimed at U.S. businesses is starting to spread around the globe. Jason Blair has the highlights from Capitol Hill. And Ukraine conducts a first-of-its-kind attack against a Russian submarine. Arian Pozdar has the details of the strike and how Russia is responding when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Lawmakers say that foreign antitrust regulation unfairly targets American companies and ends up stifling innovation. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has takeaways from a congressional hearing on Capitol Hill.
The strategy is simple: copy American innovation and then fine and regulate the companies that create it out of existence.
In a hearing titled Anti-American Antitrust: How Foreign Governments Target U.S. Businesses, some House lawmakers say that the U.S. needs to stand up to, quote, micromanagement regulation from European and other countries targeting the U.S. Some lawmakers say that it goes against American free market values and ends up hurting all countries involved in the long run.
Do we believe in competition driven by consumers and innovation, or competition dictated by bureaucrats and foreign ministries?
One specific policy that lawmakers singled out is the European Digital Markets Act, or DMA.
The DMA does not ask whether consumers have been harmed. It does not even ask whether a business has done anything wrong. It asks whether a company is large, successful, and most importantly, American. If the answer is yes, the rules suddenly change. Common business practices are banned. Innovation is treated as a threat, and foreign rivals are handed access to data and technology that they could never build or earn on their own.
What we've learned from this ex ante type of regulation is that blanket regulation doesn't work, in a sense that it's just over-deterring on innovations, because companies spend more time on compliance and councils and fees trying to understand regulations that is always vague, rather than focusing on innovation, deploying product.
Some of the Democrat lawmakers say that the U.S. has its own domestic antitrust problems to deal with that should take priority.
Our colleagues have described this hearing as anti-American antitrust, but
I'm afraid they're not interested in actually dismantling monopolies, collusion, or price fixing. On the contrary, their policy is all about elevating the interests of the largest corporations, especially the ones donating directly to Donald Trump and MAGA.
I have an idea. Why don't we clean up our own house first? The true threat to enforcement of antitrust law into American companies is the perversion of antitrust undertaken by the Trump administration.
One expert witness says the regulation that South Korea is imposing on the U.S. ends up hurting both countries.
But they damage the Korean economy itself, and our data suggests that the damage to the Korean economy is extensive, $450 to $470 billion over a 10-year period. The damage that they do to the U.S. economy is greater than $500 billion over a 10-year period on a long-run basis.
Chairman Fitzgerald says that one major reason for having the hearing is that the policies in question, which target Americans, started in Europe and are now spreading across the globe. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Kyiv says that Ukrainian officials could hold more peace talks with their U.S. counterparts as soon as this weekend. And as the fighting between Moscow and Kyiv continues, Ukraine conducts a first-of-its-kind attack against Russia. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the latest.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying peace talks with the U.S. could take place within the coming days. This after European nations reviewed the latest peace proposals and sending them to Washington.
And now, with all these reactions in hand, I think the American side will contact the Russian side, and after that, there will be a meeting with Ukraine and the United States at the level of negotiating teams. I think in the coming days, possibly over the weekend.
Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Ukraine's domestic security service reports that Kyiv's forces struck a Russian submarine in a Black Sea port. The intelligence service released this video, saying the attack caused critical damage to the vessel. Ukraine says it used sub-sea baby drones in the first-of-its-kind attack. According to Kyiv, rebuilding the Russian submarine would cost Moscow $500 million. Russia acknowledges the Ukrainian attack, but adds that it failed.
As a result of the sabotage attempt, none of the ships or submarines of the Black Sea Fleet sustained any damage, and they continue to carry out their service as normal.
Russian TV showed video of the submarine after the attack. Moscow says the vessel is undamaged, but the video doesn't show the boat's stern. And in Europe, in The Hague, Zelensky and 34 other countries formally approved plans to create a compensation body. That's to pay for damages to Ukraine caused by the Russian invasion.
So accountability in general is a crucial part of the end of any conflict.
They need to be held responsible for the loss of life, the damage to property, for the sexual violence.
Some 80,000 claims have already been filed with the register, which is based in The Hague. But questions remain about where the money will come from.
We expect a total amount of over 200 billion euros. It is only fair that the Russians should pay for the destruction, but even 210 billion will still not be enough.
One proposal is to use some of the tens of billions of dollars in frozen Russian assets held in Europe. The EU High Representative says there are precedents which can be used to back up the idea.
After Iraq's invasion of Kuwait, the United Nations Compensation Commission was able to use Iraqi oil revenues to pay reparations.
She added that, in her opinion, Russia is no less liable for the damage in Ukraine than Iraq was for the damage in Kuwait. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Coming up, newly revealed emails show the FBI voiced doubts about whether to conduct its 2022 raid on President Trump's Mar-a-Lago property. Bureau officials expressed concerns at the time of whether they had probable cause for the search. David Lamb has details when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Newly released emails show the FBI had doubts about its 2022 search of Mar-a-Lago. Bureau officials at the time expressed concerns that they did not have probable cause to conduct the raid. NTD's David Lamb reports.
FBI Director Kash Patel says that agents did not have probable cause to raid President Trump's Florida property in 2022, searching for classified documents. On Tuesday, Patel responded to a reporter's statement about probable cause concerns, saying, quote, "It's true, we just turned over documents to Capitol Hill to be made public, showing the FBI told DOJ they did not have probable cause for raiding President Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago, but that the DOJ pushed for it regardless." This was 3 years before Patel took office. Emails were released by the office of Senator Chuck Grassley showing communication between the DOJ and FBI in the weeks leading up to the Mar-a-Lago search. One email from the FBI Washington field office expresses concerns that the search warrant information was single source, was not corroborated, and may have been outdated. House Speaker Mike Johnson said he hasn't personally reviewed the materials, but commented on the DOJ under the Biden administration, saying they used it to go after political enemies, and chief among them was, of course, Donald J. Trump. Trump was later charged in the case with retaining classified documents after leaving office. Trump pleaded not guilty and said the charges were part of a long-standing scheme designed to harm his re-election chances. Former special counsel Jack Smith, who brought the case against Trump, defended his team's work. He sat to testify before the House on Wednesday. David Lamb, NTD News.
Australia's counter-terrorism authorities now say the gunmen who targeted a Jewish celebration at Sydney's Bondi Beach were inspired by Islamic State ideology. The attack was quickly characterized as a terrorist incident. Joining us now to discuss is foreign policy analyst and former career diplomat Bart McCoys. He's also a news commentator, creating daily bite-sized analysis under A Minute with Bart. Bart, thank you so much for joining us. Now, first, there were two suspects here, a father and son duo, who appear to hold the same radical views. How does having two change the dynamic here and what we saw play out?
Well, if you mean how it changes the dynamic of the shooting, it means a multiplication of victims. Having two shooters doesn't just double the number of victims, it goes up exponentially because nobody can tell for sure where the shots are coming from and they can cover each other. It was a very sad event, but it was an event that was so entirely preventable.
Now, when it comes to that bystander who tackled one of the gunmen, this clip has been making the rounds and he's being hailed a hero. Others say in the true spirit of Hanukkah, it's a miracle what that bystander did. What was your reaction watching that clip?
Well, you know, you may remember I've worked in the Arab and Islamic world for over 37 years, almost 40 years, and I have lots of Arab and Muslim friends. I've also been a lifelong Zionist, and I have lots of Jewish friends. This man, this Syrian man who tackled the guy, he told his cousin before he went to do it, he said, "I'm probably going to die, but I have to do this." Those are the kinds of Muslims, those are the kinds of Arabs I wish everybody could meet, because I think there are more of them than there are of the extremists, but the extremists dominate. They dominate Islam, they dominate the Arab world. They are the ones that are coming to foreign countries and infiltrating foreign countries. And the extremists are the ones that we see because they're the ones that are making their presence felt. I wish more, like this man, Ahmed Al-Ahmed was his name. I wish there were more Ahmed Al-Ahmeds out there who would stand up and fight this. That's how we beat extremist Islam, by having other Muslims stand up and say, enough, you don't represent us. This isn't what it's like.
And to your point, multiple world leaders have weighed in, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who said of Ahmed, "We saw an action of a brave man, turns out a Muslim brave man, and I salute him. That stopped one of these terrorists from killing innocent Jews." What do you make of that aspect? This was a Muslim man, as you were mentioning earlier, saving Jewish lives against Islamic extremism.
Until the rest of the Islamic world begins to look at Jews as human beings and as brothers and sisters, which is the way most Jews, Muslims, and Arabs, by the way. The Jews are not the ones who are the extremists. They're not the Israelis are not the extremists. Even when they're in the midst of a battle, they try to save the lives of people who are non-combatants. Until the rest of the Islamic world acts like this guy, we have to be on our guard. This guy is the future of the world if we can find more like him.
I want to go back to your earlier point, Bart, about this being, preventable, because zooming out a bit, this wasn't the only shooting that took place over the weekend, although arguably the deadliest, the one at Bondi Beach. There was also the attack on U.S. soldiers in Syria, killing 3 Americans, and that foiled attack in Germany. We are seeing heightened threat alerts of you all around the world for Islamic terror attacks now during the holidays especially. How important do you think it is that people and governments continue to uphold their traditions in the face of these threat alerts?
It is imperative, and you let the people in Los Angeles that are a weird kind of like group that include Free Palestine as one of their slogans, and the people in the Brussels Christmas market in Belgium who went and shut it down just with shouting and smoke and intimidation. The reason I said this was preventable was in Australia alone, there were demonstrations, there were riots, there were violence, there were for death to the Jews right there at Bondi Beach. And it's been happening in the 2 years since October 7th. October 7th emboldened the radical Islamists around the world, emboldened the radical Palestinians around the world, and they see that murder and torture of October 7th as a gateway to statehood. And the Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, went and fell right into their trap and stood up and said, "Oh, we want to recognize Palestinian statehood. When you encourage it, you get more of it." If he had not done that, they would not have been so bold as to commit this act. It's all of those things that precede. It's the anti-Semitism, it's the anti-Christian activism. All of that precedes these vicious attacks.
And, with the holidays either here or around the corner, what is your hope this holiday season?
Well, the hope of Christmas is the uniting of the world, of everyone in the world seeing one another as brothers and sisters. The hope of Hanukkah is the resilience, the light, the life. Life and light are the messages of Hanukkah. And but we must be vigilant. We cannot pretend that everything is soft and easy. We have to be on our guard, because there are people, prowling wolves around the lamb coat that are trying to kill us if we let our guard down. We must be vigilant. We must keep our guard up, and in our hearts preserve the love of our Savior and of our Father in heaven that Christmas represents. It's a difficult balance, but it's the duty that we have to maintain it.
Well, Bart Marcoins, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And a special programming note, NTD Evening News and Capitol Report will be hosted live from America Fest 2025 in Phoenix, Arizona this Thursday and Friday. It's Turning Point USA's first major conference since the assassination of the organization's founder, Charlie Kirk. NTD Steve Lance and myself will be on the ground to bring you real-time coverage and in-depth interviews, and we'll have live special coverage of the 4 days of the event from December 18th to the 21st. That's this Thursday to Sunday. Don't miss it. Coming up in the NBA, a 42-point game last night puts this 18-year-old phenom into the record books. Dave Martin joins us to discuss when we return. And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, a lot going on because we've got college football as well as NFL news, a whole buffet really. But let's start in the NBA as Dallas Mavericks teenage rookie Cooper Flagg scored a career-high 42 points and the team's lost to Utah yesterday. Where does that rank, though, in terms of youngest to score 40?
Well, yeah, he's out. He's now the youngest ever, excuse me there. Flagg is actually still 18 years old. He turns 19 on Sunday. That's the most points ever scored by an 18-year-old in league history, beating LeBron James' 37 points set in 2003. Now, Flagg has really been playing well of late, averaging nearly 26 points per game over his last 7 games. So yesterday, he really got to the free throw line a lot, hitting 15 out of 20 at the free throw line there. Overall, his 42 points, that was the 4th most ever by a teenager in NBA history, tying him with Anthony Edwards and Kevin Durant, who were both 19 when they did it. Unfortunately, it was not enough as Dallas still lost to Utah. Now, the Mavericks' next game will be Thursday night. Flagg still has 2 more games until he actually turns 19 on Sunday. So, Tiff, when we get our NBA fantasy league, you want to pick up this guy too, all right?
I mean, it looks like he has a rosy career ahead of him.
I'd say so. He's a little ahead of where I was when I was 18.
Well, looking at college football news, though, Indiana head coach Kirk Cignetti became the first ever to win back-to-back AP Coach of the Year awards today. Now, just how much of an impact has he made on this program?
I mean, a huge impact here. Cignetti's only been there 2 seasons. He's won AP Coach of the Year both seasons. They're 13-0 this year. Last year, they were 11-2. And before last year, the most wins they ever had in a season was 9. They did that twice in the 100-plus years before that, the last time being 1967. Now, they've been a doormat for so long. The Hoosiers actually entered this season with the most losses in NCAA history, with 714. Of course, they have not lost yet, so Northwestern has actually passed them in terms of losses. In fact, when Indiana beat Ohio State for the Big Ten title a couple weeks ago, it was a program with the 2nd most losses ever, beating the team with the 2nd most wins ever. Quite a feat there. And usually, of course, when a coach builds a program, it takes a few years for this to get going, not immediate results like this. I've never seen something this quick before. So naturally, he was a runaway choice for Coach of the Year, taking 47 of the 52 first place votes. His Hoosiers are in the playoffs. They get a bye for the first round. They will play the winner of Oklahoma versus Alabama, which is on Friday night. So I know you are excited. I'm very excited too for these playoffs here.
It's nice having some good news. I feel like normally when we talk about coaches, it's when they're fired.
Yeah, there's usually some scandal going on or they're getting paid a whole bunch of money to be fired. But yes, we got some positive news here today.
Well, moving to NFL news, LA Rams All-Pro receiver Davante Adams injured his hamstring in Sunday's win over Detroit. What is his status, though, for the team's Thursday night game in Seattle?
Surprisingly, they have not ruled him out yet. I say surprisingly because if you have a Thursday night game, it means a very short week to recover, especially for a hamstring injury. But the Thursday night game is a big one. Rams and Seahawks are not only tied for first place in the division with 11-3 records, but they're also tied for the best record in the NFC. Now, the top 4 seeds in the NFC playoffs, though, only go to division winners. So one of these two is going to have to settle for at least the number 5 seed. Now, Rams coach Sean McVay said he was optimistic about Adams' injury, so there's at least that. Now, meanwhile, McVay and his wife had just announced the birth of their son, Christian Alexander McVay, on Monday. McVay's also have another son, Jordan, born in 2023. So congratulations to those two. More happy news here, Tiff. We got a lot of happy news here today.
I'm liking this, whatever you call it, buffet of good news.
Yes, the great buffet here, right?
Shifting gears to running, I don't think we ever talk about running.
We never talk about running. And even this one, I gotta say, isn't quite an official running. But I won't spoil it. Go ahead, all right?
All right, let me ask my question. A group of marathon runners in Antarctica decided to stage the first ever Antarctic backwards mile race.
Yeah, believe it or not, that's not an official race. They just kind of made it up here. Now, these marathon runners, they didn't come to Antarctica for this event specifically. They were actually there for this last weekend's Antarctic ice marathon, but it was a bit of a way to get a flight back home. So with some time to kill, they decided to do this kind of impromptu backwards race. And you can see it's more of a fun race than anything else, with people, falling all along the way. Now, the men's winner, Frederick Aubry of Montreal, he was well ahead. Guy dressed well ahead anyway of the guy who dressed like a penguin, which should be on there soon. Oh, there's Frosty the Snowman, or Snow Woman actually in this case. Meanwhile, the women's winner, another Canadian, Amy Ellett. Ellett actually beat Frosty the Snow Woman here. Apparently very decent weather for this race, which took place yesterday. Temperatures around 23 degrees Fahrenheit. So kind of cold to be running, but at least, you warm up in that kind of weather, hopefully, I would think. My guess.
Still sounds cold.
Yeah, it's pretty
The most
cold.
I've done is the Central Park half. That's like in February. That was cold enough for me.
Okay. Well, I don't remember the coldest that I ran in. So probably wasn't a memorable event, so we'll just leave it at that.
All right, well, on that note, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tiff.
And that's all for today's news. For on-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.